All right, so we've all seen those mind-blowing demos, right? The ones where an AI just codes. But what does it really take to get that kind of power running on your own computer without shelling out for those expensive big tech subscriptions? Well, that's the story we're diving into today. It's a real coder's quest to build a personal AI assistant from scratch.
And it all kicks off with a problem that I bet a lot of you can relate to. This user on the local LLM forums, donkey bonked, just lays it all out. You can't always afford those APIs or the crazy expensive subscriptions. The best AI tools, they're often stuck behind a paywall. So what do? You're left with a choice. Either pay up, or you got to figure out how to build it yourself.
So that brings us right to the heart of the matter, the AI coding dilemma. It's really this big showdown, right? Cloud versus local. See, most of the super powerful AI coding tools, they live up in the cloud. And that means you're dealing with subscriptions, those annoying usage caps, and, the whole privacy thing, sending your own code to some third-party server. Kind of sketchy.
Let's break it down. You've got cloud AI over here. Super easy to use, for sure. But you're kind of chained to the costs and those privacy worries. Then, on the other side, you have local AI. Here you get total control, total privacy, and absolutely no usage limits. Sounds amazing, right? The catch is, you need some serious hardware to get started, and you gotta have the chops to actually set the whole thing up.
Okay, so we're at this fork in the road. And what's happening is a whole community of enthusiasts are saying, you know what, I'm going local. They're literally piecing together hardware, testing all these open source models, and building their own solutions. And that's exactly what we're gonna do today. We're gonna follow the journey of one of these folks, a user named Donkey Bonked, who laid it all out in the forums.
And look, this isn't some story from a fancy, polished AI research lab. No way. This is straight from a developer in the trenches, just trying to make their own workflow better. And because they shared everything in these super detailed forum posts, we get this raw, unfiltered look at what it actually takes to bring that AI power home.
So first things first, you gotta build a rig. And this is the first major roadblock, right? You can't just run these gigantic language models on your everyday laptop. It takes some serious GPU muscle. And our guy here, he had to get really creative to build a machine that could actually handle it.
I mean, just look at this setup. This is not your standard PC. We're talking about a Dell Precision laptop, but it's been beefed up with 96 gigs of RAM. But that's not even the craziest part. The real magic is how they're mashing together the laptop's internal pro-grade RTX 5000 GPU with a beastly external RTX 3090, and it's all connected through a single Thunderbolt port. It's wild.
And honestly, this just perfectly captures the spirit of the whole local AI community. The user themselves calls it a ghetto AI rig. And it is. It's this cobbled together, totally unorthodox setup. It's got known bottlenecks like that slower Thunderbolt connection for the big GPU. But here's the thing. The goal isn't perfection. It's all about making it work with whatever you can get your hands on.
All right, so the rig is built. Now it's time for the main event, putting the models in the arena. How do these open source AIs actually perform when you throw a real problem at them? We're not talking about some fake synthetic benchmark here. This is a real-world coding challenge.
So what was the test? Well, the user created their own personal benchmark. The task sounds simple. Build a notepad app in Python. But here's the catch. They secretly filled it with hidden logic traps. This wasn't about solving some textbook problem. The whole point was to see if an AI could actually reason its way through the tricky parts and produce code that really works, not just spit out some generic snippets.
Okay, let's get to the scorecard. The results are fascinating. The user tested a bunch of popular models, and they measured the speed in tokens per second, which is basically how fast the AI can talk or type. So Devstral, which was kind of the reigning champ, it passed the test, but it took 2 prompts to get there. Cline was super fast, but the user called it lazy. And then a new contender stepped into the ring, Nematron 3 Nano. It was clocking in around 29 tokens per second, which is pretty solid, but its real breakthrough had nothing to do with speed.
1. That's the magic number. It passed the entire test, logic traps and all, in a single prompt. This was huge, a total breakthrough. For the very first time, a model running on this homemade desktop rig achieved a level of performance that, until then, they'd only ever seen from the super elite, super expensive cloud AIs.
So on this gritty, real-world test, Nematron was the clear winner, the new champ. But this brings up a really interesting question, doesn't it? How does this real-world feel stack up against the official academic benchmarks that all the research papers talk about?
And when you look at the official numbers, like the SWE-bench scores, things get really weird. Check this out. Devstral, that's the model that lost to Nimitron on our users test, it actually scores a super impressive 68% here, right up there with some much bigger models. And what does that tell you? It shows there's this massive gap between how a model performs in a sterile lab environment and what's actually useful for a developer working on their own machine.
And that brings us to the wisdom of the forums. Because this whole quest, it's not happening in a vacuum. The local Lala forum is like the digital campfire for this community. It's where everyone comes together to share their wins, debug their crazy problems, and just collectively figure out how to push this whole thing forward.
And people there do not hold back. The discussions are so real. You've got users confirming just insane performance on new hardware. Like, someone with a 5090 is getting over 200 tokens per second. I mean, think about that. That's a massive jump from our users' 29. And it's this constant reminder that the hunger for more power, it just never stops.
But it's not all about raw speed. The community also shares the hard truths about how reliable these models are. Even Nimitron, the one that did so well, can be super inconsistent. As this user says, when it's bad, it's epic bad. That's the kind of honest feedback you are never, ever going to read in a polished press release.
And this quote, man, it just perfectly captures how experimental all of this stuff still is. You have people sharing the most bizarre bugs, like models getting stuck in a thinking loop and just spitting out complete gibberish. This is so far from a polished, finished product. It's a frontier, and these users are the pioneers, out there mapping it all out together.
So, after all this, is local AI really for you? After following this whole journey, from building a custom rig to fighting off bizarre bugs, what's the final verdict? Is running a powerful AI on your own desktop something the average developer can actually do?
And the big takeaway is, yeah, it's absolutely possible. But, and this is a big but, it's not for everyone. It really takes a certain kind of person. You need that passion, that genuine excitement for just messing around and experimenting. You need the resourcefulness to build a ghetto rig and make it sing. You definitely need the patience to tinker and debug when things go wrong. And maybe most important of all, you need to be part of that community, leaning on what everyone else has learned.
Because for the people who really get bit by this bug, the quest just continues. It never really ends. Our hero, Donkey Bonked, they didn't just stop after finding a model that worked. Nope, they immediately went out and bought 2 more RTX 3090s to build an even bigger, badder rig. That first taste of success, it just makes you hungry for more.
And all of this leaves us with a really fascinating question to chew on. As these pioneers, people like Donkey Bonked, keep pushing the limits of what you can do on a home desktop, you really have to wonder, is the next world-changing app going to be coded by a lone genius or by the custom-built AI humming away in their spare room?